Do this and an avoidant will apologize for hurting you. The first is to detach and don't chase their apology. The more pressure you apply, the more they're going to shut down. They essentially do not want to feel any unwanted emotions as well as deal with any conflicts because those are things that are unpredictable, and on top of that will cause them to essentially feel those unwanted emotions that they are trying to avoid. So because of that, they will continue to push further and further away from you the more that you do this, which I know it's just you trying to figure things out and wanting to see what's going on and essentially just try to get them to at least take accountability for their actions. But at the end of the day, they're not going to respond well to this, and it's only going to make things worse. Instead, you have to release the outcome and let your silence do the talking, because when you go silent, this is going to cause them to naturally begin to process things and to start to see things for what they are rather than what they were telling themselves. Because an avoidant will typically misconstrue things to fit their narrative to essentially make sure that they don't have to deal with the reality of realizing that this avoidant attachment style is the main culprit as to why things weren't working out. And because of that, it allows them to continue to run this avoidant attachment style without them really seeing how this has contributed to why things haven't been working out, rather than everyone else not listening to them and just doing things that is essentially causing them to push away from everyone. But in this moment, that distance that you are giving them will no longer allow those distractions to work anymore, and they'll typically start to see things for what they are in that moment. Number two is to show strength in your boundaries. Don't accept the breadcrumbing, the mixed signals, or even the re-entry on their terms, because this is what an avoidant believes is going to naturally happen, right? This is a system and they're used to this, so they're waiting for one of these things to happen, and that sends them a sign that they can continue to run this avoidant attachment style and continue to push away from you when they want, and you are essentially going to be there readily available to them. But when you take this safety net away from them, that's when they start to feel very uncomfortable, and they're not used to this because they don't know how to respond to this, right? They really have this methodical way of going about this for whenever you respond to either one of these, whether whenever they breadcrumb and you entertain it, that's essentially their way of trying to see where you are at. And when they get that, they can essentially feel a lot better that you are not going to just outright move on from them. But when you start respecting your own emotional safety, and that includes your boundaries, this is essentially where it sends them that signal that you aren't going to continue to play this game on their terms. You're no longer going to entertain this, and because of that, this deregulates them because they don't know how to respond to this. And like we mentioned earlier, when it comes to an avoidant, they're always trying to control the situations because that will allow them to assure that they're not going to have to feel and deal with any unwanted emotions. So this is very important for you to understand, because I know that it can be very hard for you not to respond to these things or act like you normally would because you're used to this as well. But the more that you're able to stick to that, the more that you're sending that signal to them that you're not playing around, and this is going to cause them to inevitably have to really look at things and start to feel those emotions that they're suppressing down, which is tied to them realizing the magnitude of potentially losing someone like you fully. But all in all, your boundaries are a lot more louder than the begging. Number three is to focus on your glow up and growth. When they see that you are thriving without them, their ego takes a hit because up until that point, they genuinely believe that you need them just as much as they need you. And this is something that you might have presented to them by you essentially trying to do everything that you can to make this relationship work. And it's only natural for someone who's in love to respond that way. But as we all know, in a healthy relationship, nobody should ever be relying on someone to need them that much. And this is where you are sending that signal to them by you essentially focusing on yourself. But the most important thing that you have to do is to make sure that this is authentic to you and not something that you are trying to portray. And the way that you can portray it is that if you're trying to post all of these different social media posts to show that, you know, you're happy and you're thriving and all these different things that are not real to you, but just come off as you just trying to get attention from there. And this is something that you need to be aware of because they'll be able to read through that. They'll see that this is an attempt for you to try to get people to believe that, you know, you're just happily moved on and you don't need this person, or maybe you're sending cryptic messages. This is something that you want to try to avoid, because that feeds this part of them that feels like you are still attached, because you essentially are. But when you are focusing on your glow up and your growth on your own and not needing to broadcast it, this is naturally going to get back to them at some point in time, and they're going to realize that this is real because you weren't out there broadcasting it to everyone else, because you were doing it for yourself. And there's something that's so profound about somebody doing that that causes people to really understand that you are serious. And that's when that reflection begins, and they start to realize that they potentially have lost the best thing that ever happened to them, which was you, because there is a part of them that does see all the things that you've done for them, and they realize that you are the perfect partner for them, but they really take you for granted while you're in the relationship and even after the breakup, because again, they feel like you are essentially going to come back. But in this moment, because of that reflection, they start to really see how much you've done for them and how you were there for them, and that tends to be where they would reach out to you to start to hint that they're sorry for the way that they've treated you or the way that this relationship went, because they are longing for that relationship, and those real authentic emotions that they were suppressing down are starting to come up, and they're starting to process this relationship and the breakup in real time at this stage usually. The fourth thing is to mirror their behavior in a calm detachment. No outbursts, no guilt trips, or dramatic exits. I know that this is something that you might think is going to help, but it's only going to make things worse, because they're not going to respond the same way someone would that doesn't have this type of attachment. They're going to take this as evidence that they need to continue to push away from you because you're not essentially respecting their boundaries, and you're continue to being needy or pushing too much. So when you do those things, that's what happens. But when you mirror their behavior in a sense of not allowing this stuff to affect you and kind of detaching yourself from them the way that they are, this starts to really give them a taste of their own medicine. And they start to realize how uncomfortable and quite frankly hurting it is to go through something like this, where the person that you care for is just essentially kind of ignoring you and not taking what you're saying or feeling seriously, and just kind of pushing away from you. And we all know that this is due to them not getting their needs met from their caregiver, and this tends to be just a natural response that comes up. But the thing is that you've tried to be patient with them, you've tried to do everything that you possibly can to make them feel comfortable, and your expectations were just for them to slowly begin to work on it, or at least try to acknowledge that this avoidant attachment style is really what is causing them to not show up in the relationship. But they haven't been able to do that up until this point, and they've really kind of almost made excuses for it and just continue to go about it as if nothing's wrong. And that's where this person kind of needs to face the reality and see in real time how this affects things. And typically when you're able to mirror it back to them, that's when they start to see these things. But it's also important for you to not go crazy and do exactly everything that they're doing, because it's not going to be effective and it's not healthy for you to do that. But it's just for you to essentially be able to detach whenever they detach, and to no longer allow these different actions and behaviors that they're doing to affect you, and just to begin to process them out yourself and to not entertain them anymore. And that's what's going to cause them to realize these things, and that's how you become a mirror back to them, to where they realize that this avoidant attachment style is really a hindrance on not only your relationship but also other relationships outside of yours. And the fifth and final thing is to give them space to come to the realization. When it comes to an avoidant, we all know that they have a delay in realizing things, and a person with this type of attachment more than ever needs the space to be able to process things. And it sucks to hear that, because again, I know that you are probably wanting to be there and trying to process it with them and talk things through like you typically would with somebody else that doesn't have this type of attachment. But when it comes to an avoidant, they really do need that space away to begin to understand things and process things and see things outside of this relationship, because chances are when they're in the relationship, this avoidant attachment style starts to slowly begin to operate, and they don't realize it a lot of the times, right? It's just become so a part of their nature and what they do that they're not even realizing that this is happening. But when they have the space away from the relationship, they start to really see that in real time. Now, whether or not they go down a path of starting to try to work things out, or just simply making excuses as to why this avoidant attachment is necessary for them and they need to, essentially continue it and you just have to adapt to it, that's going to be up to them. But I promise you that giving them space is going to be the best thing that you do, because either one, they come to that realization and they start to make that legitimate progress towards healing from that, or two, you realize that this person just simply doesn't have what it takes right now to process and work through this avoidant attachment style, and it's time for you to prioritize yourself and begin to move on from the relationship, because that's very important for you to really ask yourself, because you don't want to be continuously putting in this effort, time, and energy into trying to work this out with somebody who's not willing to want to work this out, right? They have to be the one to want to do this, and it has to come from them authentically, because that's where that motivation to continue to keep pushing through this is going to come from, because this is not going to be easy. They're going to have to really work hard to unravel all of this and to really process and work through this avoidant attachment style, which typically is going to take a while to work through and is going to require a professional like a therapist to help them process and work through this. And it's going to be very uncomfortable, and there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and it really requires a lot of work for them to process it, because again, this happened due to their caregiver not meeting their emotional needs through a long extended period of time. So this is only going to be natural for them to have a hard time to want to begin this process, but also when they're in it to continue it. So I know, again, this is a very hard thing for you to essentially contemplate, and I know that there's a part of you that knows deep down what the answer is, and it's important for you to listen to that side of you, because I know that you came to this video looking for 100% way to get this avoidant to apologize to you, but at the end of the day, you can't control whether or not this person is going to apologize, because they have to come to the realization that this avoidant attachment style really has run amok over you guys' relationship, and it's been a problem, and they have to start to realize how they've contributed to why this relationship didn't work, because they allowed this avoidant attachment style to continue to run without them essentially checking it. And as we know, when it comes to an avoidant, they're trying to avoid these type of emotions or conflicts because they can't control how you're going to respond, and they don't want you to reject them whenever they try to apologize. So that's why it's important to go through these particular steps, because it's not only giving the best chances of this avoidant to realize how this avoidant attachment style has been a negative thing to you guys' relationship, but it also is about you getting the space away from this person so that you can begin to process things on your own terms and understand what do you want, because there's a high chance that you are exhausted from continuing to have to entertain this and put in all this work and not getting anything in return from their end, which is effort on their part with trying to work things out, rather than them detaching from you and pushing away whenever they feel uncomfortable or don't want to express emotions. So with that being said, I hope that you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.